Good evening. It is August 4th, 2015. We took a break for a couple months for Google Rocks, and we are back, and it's going to be a bang-up show because it's going to be about Future Ready, and we have, as you can see, a full house today. We have presenters, and we have active listeners and question askers, and I'm going to open up the Q&A, and hopefully we will have people from the audience asking as well. But let's go across the board, and we will start with Brendan, who's a presenter tonight. Brendan, could you tell us in a nutshell who you are?
Sure. Brendan Brennan with the Janus Group, also a teacher at the University Laboratory School, and we are working on Hawaii's Future Ready Learning Project.
Great. And Holly, who is a question asker.
Hi, Holly Gates from Haiku Elementary School, librarian.
And Jody, who's a question asker.
Hi, Jody Brown, Kalama Intermediate School, librarian.
And J.R. Genex Orinian, beautiful name, from California, and he's a presenter. Tell us about yourself, J.R.
Hi, I'm J.R. Genexter, I'm a digital learning coach in Southern California.
And Michael Africano, who is a presenter.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike Fricano. I'm a teacher architect for the Janus Group and tech integration specialist for Iolani School in the state of Hawaii. And I'll be in and out because my son likes to scream. So
bring him on.
Yeah.
And we have Michelle, a question asker.
Hi, I'm Michelle Colt, and I'm the librarian at Haleiakula Elementary School.
And we have Stephanie, who's a presenter.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Shipton. I'm the Acting Director of Policy, Innovation, Planning, and Evaluation for the Hawaii Department of Education, and we lead up the Future Ready Learning work in Hawaii.
Great. And already in the Q&A, we have Jane Lofton from California. Welcome, Jane. Glad to have you here. I think JR knows Jane, or Jane knows JR. Anyway, we're going to start off with Stephanie, who will tell us what exactly Future Ready is, especially as it relates to the Department of Education in Hawaii. And I think Brendan will probably go next and elaborate on his. Maybe he and Michael can talk about their involvement. And then JR can talk about his involvement. We'll loosely have it that way, but anyone can ask questions at any time, I'm assuming. Okay, go ahead, Stephanie. Floor is yours.
Great. Well, thank you, Linda, and everybody else on the panel for having us on and talking about this very exciting project. Future Ready Learning in Hawaii really was seeded in the Access Learning Pilot Project, which was an 8-school pilot project to study the effectiveness of one-to-one implementation in Hawaii in 8 schools with digital curricular materials, and that was about 3 years ago. And we very quickly realized partway through that implementation that we were focusing on the wrong things by focusing on digital materials and sorry, I keep getting little pings. By focusing on digital materials and devices, and we quickly pivoted to focus on the supports for school-level staff to be able to integrate technology successfully in the classroom. So we piloted this for 2 years with very positive results from both years of our evaluations as well as from the professional development evaluations. So it just so happened this past fall when we were developing our plan to scale this statewide that the White House announced their intention to release a project called Connect Ed, which gave schools and districts and teachers access to lower-cost software and device options. And then shortly thereafter, that the U.S. Department of Education, in partnership with the Alliance for Excellent Education, would be launching a Future Ready Schools project aimed at supporting school districts. So we very shamelessly, because we were in the midst of fundraising, decided that we would align the title of our scaling program to the White House and U.S. Department of Education program, which is why you have their Future Ready Schools work and Hawaii's Future Ready Learning work, because we, I think rightly so, believe that the focus should be on the learning. So we kicked that off last fall, Our program focuses on providing schools with options to engage with supports to develop their school level visions and plans at the leadership level, to participate in a gap assessment that helps tell them at a school level where their areas of work are, and Brendan can talk about that a little bit more. And after leading the leadership teams through facilitated support, we open up a statewide opportunity for any school to submit their implementation plan, to be able to receive significant professional development at no cost to actually implement their plans and be able to deploy technology with the strongest chance of success. We have intentionally not focused on devices with our program and instead focused on the strong instructional strategies that help teachers integrate technology as a tool. We've shied away from picking a particular device or a particular curricular package and again focused on the pedagogy. So we're pretty excited. The Future Ready Schools work, we were at the San Francisco Summit that they had, actually it was Mountain View, the Mountain View Summit that they had several months ago presenting. We're pleased that they've acknowledged our plan as one of the exemplar plans across the country for other districts to take a look at. And I think the biggest difference is that while they're focusing on district policy gap assessments, we're looking at school level gap assessments because that's where the rubber hits the road. And this type of program really happens at the school and not at the district. And we think we've figured out a way to model for districts how they can clear the path for schools and get out of the way for schools, while also providing them with the supports that they need for their unique context to be successful. So I've spoken quite a bit. I'll let Brendan and Michael take over from here and go into the weeds. There are professional development providers for each of the different pieces of the Future Ready Learning Program, and we're also involved in our Access Learning pilot project.
That's it. I think the show's over. You said it all. So just to talk about some of the genesis of the program, what we really like about the program is that it's research-based. We're not just throwing a lot of money against the wall and trying to hope that something sticks, like a lot of other school districts have, LAUSD. But I think what we tried to do is start small. We started at the University Laboratory School, and even before that, there was a research project, NSF project called Project Fancy. I know the name. Stephanie loves the name, and that was focusing on formative assessment in a network classroom. But a lot of the things that we learned through that program about how to use technology to support, formative, inquiry-based, collaborative, communicative, pedagogical strategies found its way into our one-to-one program at the laboratory school. And when we launched it PD first, right? Even before devices went out to students, the teachers had a full year of PD, and we noticed that the impacts were much bigger than we were seeing around the country at other deployment models. So, we studied it, we looked at it, we presented it to the Department of Education. They liked it. We really wanted to focus mostly on the teaching and the learning and those opportunities found in the Common Core because they're really great, and they can be realized and supported with appropriate applications of technology and enough professional development. So we grew the program to the 8 Access Learning Schools, and here we are at Future Ready. And I think Stephanie did a good job of walking through how the schools come on board and how we develop leadership first. We want to create ground conditions for success. We like to call it, Future Ready Fertility. We're still playing with that one, though. But it's, the first thing that happens is leaderships develop a plan, they develop a vision. Stephanie's shaking her head. And then we want to make sure that they have the technical capacity to deploy, technology in support of collaborative, safe, communicative environments, as well as devices. Because I think one of the barriers that we've noticed here in Hawaii is that our technical capacity at the school level is limited in a lot of cases. So we train the technology coordinators, the USTs, we get them, up and running. And then the last thing we do in the initial phase is called a Pillars Institute. And I think actually, Michelle, you came to the Pillars in Access Learning, is that right?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Okay, good. We have a pillar here. I think Mike did also, right? I don't know. He's feeding the baby. But so the pillars, the whole point of the pillars is that you want to create school-level supports that can help not only help local teachers scaffold through some of the content in Future Ready, but also after we leave and after we've done the face-to-face and all the professional development, that they're able to sustain the impacts moving ahead. We don't want this to run out of steam. We like to say that, yes, we are the professional development providers, but if we have a job in 5 years, then we haven't done our job well. We want to make sure that schools are able to create their own professional development in their own image and make sure it's school, school mission consistent. And if we've accomplished that, then I think we've accomplished the goals of the Future Ready program.
And if I could just jump in, I think the DOE folks on the line are probably thinking, oh great, another big state office program that's going to come in, tell me how to write a plan to do something, hold a big session in Waikiki, and then we'll never hear from them again, and we'll never be able to move forward, and it'll be this great flash in the pan for a short period of time, and then it'll be over and done with. And I think the beauty of this program is that we're starting with the schools. We have said at the state office, people keep asking us, what does it mean to be a future-ready school? What does it look like? And I keep saying back to them that that's a great question, but if we were to answer it, we would be putting boundaries around the potential that each school has by putting whatever boundaries we have of how we can think about this around them. And so by starting with the school level gap assessments and really supporting schools to develop plans that fit their needs based on what we know are the critical high level foundations for success, we think we've actually found a way where you can scale up school specific implementation planning statewide and even nationwide. And then on top of that, our professional development delivery method is very different. And I think for folks who are on the line who aren't from Hawaii, professional development vendors love to come to Hawaii and host sessions here. They love to fly in and stay in Waikiki for a few days, have a big session, a couple breakout sessions at the Sheraton, and then take off on Tuesday, and they had a great time, and they've got a nice tan. But then meanwhile, we're kind of left here holding the bag, figuring out what to do next. And our approach to professional development has flipped everything on its head. So we've started with school-based professional development that happens at a school and is chunked and modularized in a way that works best for that school and their staff. And then we've built out intentional, deliberate strategies for peer-to-peer sharing of best practices across schools. And also built in the opportunity for individual teacher support. So we have a former DOE staffer who likes to call it bite and chew professional development. So this idea that you need time to really take a bite and swallow a lot of content, but then you also need time to really chew through it and process it to be able to apply it. So that means that in addition to the modularized, larger scale professional development sessions at the school, we built out staffing so that we can send pillars or experts out into schools to embed there throughout the week and help provide teachers with one-to-one coaching and office hours and mentoring, which is something that I don't think, frankly, has ever happened in a professional development program here. And I would challenge that that has ever happened in an intentional way in a statewide program anywhere else. So we're pretty excited about the opportunity.
Sounds neat. How about you, Michael? You have anything to add? No. Okay.
I have one quick thing that I can add here. If you don't mind, I'm gonna take over the screen here. Mike's kid is screaming.
Yeah.
I think we want to, the Future Ready Schools initiative, and that we need to delineate that. That's the U.S. Department of Education initiative that's countrywide, but really focuses on district development. We are focusing on developing school capacity to become future ready, and I think we need to mention kind of our conceptual framework that we're approaching. And previously in the green room, JR touched on it, that he was talking about a holistic approach to getting schools ready. We are trying to move away from the isolationist view of education technology, that it's only for a few people, it's only for a few students, and that it only is going to live in the science department or the math department, right? We want to make sure that we get full stakeholder support across the board, and we help the schools, the leadership teams, we guide them through creating an implementation plan that focuses on these 6 elements of the Future Ready Honeycomb. And this Future Ready Honeycomb was originally conceived by James Sanders, who worked at the White House for the I think he was an innovation fellow at the White House. And the Future Ready movement really started when he published a White House blog post about Future Ready schools a number of years ago. He since left the White House and has joined the ed tech team who worked with the US DOE to launch Future Ready schools, and they're also one of the partners. But he envisioned, kind of this North Star for schools to follow, to really integrate technology, to integrate the pedagogical practices that can be enhanced by it, and to focus on things like courageous leadership, empowering teachers, developing inspiring spaces. I think that's something that's really been left on the cutting room floor. We don't want brown classrooms anymore that are in rows, that are static, with the desks nailed down to the floor. Things should be on wheels. It should be colorful. There should be places where students can have independent work as well as collaborative work. We also need to engage the community. We have to get them involved. We need parents vested. We need nonprofits vested. We need companies vested. And all of this is really in pursuit of creating student agency. We pay a lot of lip service to student agency, but I think we've kind of failed in allowing students to start dictating, some of the terms of their education, where they can feel like they're empowered in their classroom to learn the way that they want to with the tools that they want. So I think it's important for us to really, see that this is kind of the guide that we've used for Future Ready in Hawaii. So let me give it back to you folks. Sorry, if you can hear my dog breathing over here.
That's okay. We have a lot of photo bombers.
Going,
We have Mikey. We have dogs. It's fine. There's a question from Jane Lofton, who's a librarian in California. And she asks, when you are saying assessments, do you mean GAF or I am guessing some other acronym I don't know? Would you mind defining? Thanks.
So I can give a little bit of high level, and Brendan can chime in with the details if that's helpful. So when we talk about assessments, we're talking about an actual gap assessment that helps the school become future ready. And I think Brendan has a sample report that we can share that we've got permission from actually Michelle's school to share. What we created was a tool, and it's a series of surveys more or less for principals, teachers, and students in a particular school. And it aligns with each of the components of the honeycomb that Brendan just shared. And it allows us to see where there are gaps, for example, in communication across a school. So one of the areas is around the strength of the school administration's ability to communicate their vision. And when you get the analysis in the report, what the school sees, for example, is, okay, the administration thinks that they rate a 3 out of 4 in their ability to communicate their vision. So they're doing pretty well. But then you look and you see the teachers rate them even higher, and the students rate them even higher than that. And that's where you start to get some vertical and horizontal alignment across the different pieces of the honeycomb and then within a school. And the schools are able to use that gap assessment report to then develop a school-specific plan based on their areas of need. So Brendan, I don't know if you have Holly Kula's teed up that you can share as an example of what that type of report looks like. And the beauty of it is that I don't actually see it. It's something that stays at the school that's for formative purposes. It's not an assessment for assessment's sake or for any kind of penalty or accountability or monitoring. It's truly a formative tool for each school to use. So I'll let Brendan share.
Yeah, I think it's such an enormous step, right, where assessments aren't punitive anymore, where they're actually meant to help guide. This is a big step forward. And it also establishes trust between the schools and the Department of Education. We have vowed a solemn promise to never share it with the Department of Education, and I think that helps schools to move forward. This one from Holly Kula, it pretty much, it's a survey that goes through SurveyMonkey. It's for all the administrators, the teachers, and the students also take this because we're trying to measure 2 gaps. There are 2 gaps we're trying to measure. The first one is this vertical gap, and the vertical gap is the gap between policy intents, right, policy implementation, and policy impacts, right? So administrators for policy intents, they create policy with the hope that it'll do X, Y, or Z. And then, teachers are generally responsible for policy implementation at the classroom level, but we want to find out if they're deploying the policy with fidelity, right? Or if they like the policy. And then, of course, the students, most important, and if we're really going to talk about giving them student agency, we should start with giving them an equal voice with administrators and teachers at the school level, so that they can really start to talk about their feelings about their educational spaces. So when we give this assessment, we focus on things like courageous leadership, right? What is courageous leadership? 21st century vision, systems of communication, things like partnerships with outside agencies, and professional development attitudes. One of the things that we found that's most important, especially when it comes to integrating technology, is that administrators have to participate with the teachers in the PD, A. B, they have to model and demonstrate how to use the technology effectively with the teachers. So if we're talking about things like Google Apps for Education or things like that, it's not enough to tell teachers to do it. The administrator actually has to start using it and requiring that teachers use it for department chair notes or calendars or forms or things like that, because then that shows the teachers that this isn't just a flash in the pan, A, but it also spurs the teachers on to develop some of these technological skills that are directly transferable to the classroom. And we look at other things like empowered teachers. Some of these scores we give back are meant to just help guide schools where they have areas of need, whether it's professional learning communities or access to student data, being able to innovate in the classroom. And then during the two-day Leadership Institute, they have access to this document where they can start writing and planning and addressing some of those gap areas, so that over the next 3 to 5 years, they can focus on those areas to close those gaps. I hope that kind of clears up the question about whether it's not a GAF, GAFE assessment, it's a GAP, GAP assessment.
Thank you for that. And the survey is taken by?
So there are two application process for Future Ready. I think one of the problems that we've had in the past nationally about technology initiatives is that schools really haven't had a choice. They've been told by the district, listen, you're going to deploy technology, and you're going to do it at X amount of years with Y amount of dollars, and we demand Z results. Future Ready is a little bit different. Schools come on organically, and they self-select themselves to get on the Pathways program. And to get on the Pathways program, they make certain commitments to Future Ready Pathways, because there's a big carrot at the end of the stick, right? It's a lot of free professional development. It's access to a number of resources. It's access to a vendor list for devices and things like that. So we ask the schools to take the assessment. We ask the schools, all the leadership has to attend the Leadership Institutes. We need to have the principal there. If the principal is not going to come to Leadership Institute, stay home, right? We need them there. We need them bought into the process. They have to participate in the other surveys, the evaluation, so that we can get feedback. So there's a lot of ask that we have, but we think that there's a lot of return. So currently, in our first cohort, we've got 42 schools, including Halikula, Radford, and Pearl Harbor L, who went through a beta test. So we've got about 45 schools on the Pathway programs. They all self-selected. They've all been through the Leadership Institute, and they've all taken this gap assessment.
Neat. How about Haiku and Kalama? Did they go through that at all?
I think Kalama did. I'm not sure about. I don't think Haiku did.
We're doing. We just got iPads. We're just becoming a one-to-one school, and the program we're doing is called. Oh, I should know this. I forgot just off the top of my head, but it's the grantor is taking us through our professional development. But I wonder if we might be able to do Future Ready as well. Is it possible to do two? I don't know. It sounds kind of greedy.
Well, here's how schools get on the pathway. Contact Stephanie Shipton. She's got a lot of the information. You guys can also contact us, but definitely include her on the email. And then once you've gone through this Leadership Institute, we've started to develop these pillar teachers at the school level. The technology coordinators are trained all in the first year. Then in January, once schools have developed their implementation plan, they submit that for review to the Department of Education. It's vetted against a rubric to see if these implementation plans actually are going to work, right? We want to have schools that have a plan that we think is feasible. And then in this year, in January, 20 out of the 45 schools will be selected based on their plans to enter onto what is called the fast track. And the fast track is where the schools get 2 years of this, professional development. They get access to future-ready summits and vendor lists for devices and things like that. So that's that next level of vetting that happens to get on the fast track component of future ready.
And so just to hop on, there's a couple of things. So first, we'll have all the application process and materials out to the field by the end of this month. So imagine that. You'll have plenty of lead time in the form of several months to prepare for the specifics around actually applying for the professional development. The second is that in the past, we've typically done pilots where it's all or nothing. You participate in the pilot, and that means you get the leadership support, and then that's quickly followed theoretically by professional development. What we've done with Future Ready is we've modularized and separated those two strands of supports. So our leadership and plan development support does not necessarily preclude a school from being able to apply for the professional development later on, because we wanted to provide as many access points as possible for schools across the state. So for example, if a school like Haleakala has beta tested our gap assessment and has developed a plan on their own and really doesn't feel as though they need the more intense support through the Future Ready Leadership Institute, then they don't have to participate in it. But they can still definitely take their plans and apply for the fast track professional development in January. So we've been very intentional about trying to separate the two and again provide as many points of entry as possible.
So it sounds pretty competitive.
It is in the sense that we're only limited by funding. So we're doing some very active fundraising to be able to allow more schools into the fast track this coming year. Next year it'll increase exponentially, so we will have even more schools as part of the fast track. If we're able to fundraise more money, which we are in the process of doing right now, we'll be able to accept more schools. But I think also, unlike other projects, the gateway to admission to the fast track really is a high quality plan that we think is ready for professional development and has a high likelihood of being successful in its implementation.
I wouldn't really say that it's competitive too. They're not really competing against each other.
I mean, to get in.
Yeah, they're kind of competing with themselves, right? I mean, they have to design a plan that is, as Brendan said, feasible and will work. And so they're not competing against anybody else, but they have to design a plan that will be sustainable in the long run. And so if they can't prove that, then they have a little more work on.
Yeah, Mike, that's a really good point. And I think we're approaching this from, we are tired of wasting money on professional development as a teacher, right? Which is what I am first and foremost. I hate how much money is wasted on PD, and it's mostly because there's no plan to act on the content. It's not the fault of the professional development. There's just no plan for sustainability, action taken in the classroom. There's no compulsory measures. There's no, competition. There's no vetting, right? So I think, this is a growth process for schools, and even if they don't get in on the fast track the first year, they're still eligible in the next year to get on when more and more schools open up. We're projecting that we want to get all schools on the fast track within 5 years. And that's going to take time. This is a lot of change that's being asked of the schools. But so far, what we've seen is unbelievable enthusiasm at the school level for a program like this. The Leadership Institutes just wrapped up last month, and they walked out of there pumped to get their plan together. We just had our first hangout on air to help workshop the folks through the first part of their plan. We had a packed house in the hangout. We had, dozens of people watching outside the hangout, asking questions. I mean, it's really been great to watch the schools get energized over something. I can't remember the last time that I've seen, 42 leadership teams walk out of a 2-day professional development institute with smiles on their faces.
You said that's a hangout on air, so that means that we would be able to see it?
We are
Or is it
discussing.
unlisted? Unlisted.
Well, we're trying to figure that out. It's available to the folks that are on the pathways right now. We're discussing about releasing some of that to the public, but as soon as we know, you'll know.
That'd be neat.
Yeah.
Cool. JR disappeared, and I don't want him to disappear completely. So let's talk to JR a little bit about California. We'll come back to Hawaii as well, but this actually all started with me asking JR, who is a good friend from Google Teacher Academy in New York in 2012, if he would come on, because I saw a tweet that he had tweeted about being at a Future Ready Summit. So that's what started it all. And then the Hawaii folks all jumped in, which is great because they have a great program. But I definitely wanted JR to talk a little bit about his take on Future Ready and his experience with it.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I actually remember the tweet and then the quick response afterwards. I happened to run into a cohort member, Jason Markey, as well. He couldn't make it tonight, and he actually just had I believe, a Future Ready Summit at his school at Layton in Chicago, just outside Chicago. So my experience from the summit and from talking to leadership teams that had attended were, I believe, and I really like the fact that you guys are focusing on schools, but I believe in California, just with the quantity of schools, there's just a number of schools, like in general, I believe, and I'm kind of speaking out here, is that the focus would be on leadership teams at the district level to try to implement those. And I understand the philosophical difference between what you guys are trying to do in Hawaii and versus California. But also, I think the way it's going to, I'm sort of trying to understand it, like, sort of from my point of view, from my experience at my district. It's been really beneficial to work at the district level, and the way it's working at Tustin Unified is that there's this constant communication between the district and the schools, and there's that trust that we have between district leadership and school leaders, and this connection that we have, and understanding that we're all sort of in this boat together, and we're all moving forward together, and this is and that there's this constant communication about what this vision of Tustin Unified is going to be, and how we're going to move forward into 21st century learning. And how we're going to be supporting teachers and our students achieving at high levels. So again, from my experience from the summit, I guess I didn't really answer that. Is that it's a whole community. It's an involvement of not just leadership and not just teachers and not just students, but also the involvement of the entire community. And I'm lucky to be working in a district where the community is completely immersed in the process. Again, with passing the bond measure, supporting the school districts, and also, there's this constant communication with the parents as well, in the use of social media, in the sense that this is how your tax dollars are actually being used, and directly impacting the schools that are surrounding you, and it's directly impacting your kids, and this is how it's being used. And I feel like there's, and that's sort of the idea, is that there's this constant communication and the feeling of trust between parents, between the teachers and leadership, and I think that's what I got out of being attending the summit, and seeing and observing, all the different conversations that were happening that weekend. Is that, one, you've got to have that open communication and establish that trust, and then the other thing too is that, which is probably one of the most difficult things in the initial sort of implementation of anything, of any type of initiative, is the buy-in. How are you going to actually, you could take the surveys and you get that information and have that valuable information as well, to be able to sell it to people. But I think you have to have this collective sort of movement, and everyone has to sort of agree that this is a direction that we're going to go. you know, and this is where we want to end up in, you know, 3, 5, 10 years and so forth. And that's what I wanted to ask either Michael or Renan, is how do you actually create that buy-in? And I know that's one of the most difficult questions to answer. Yes, you've provided data, and yes, you're telling a great story with the document, but you'll always have leaders that may be a little bit sort of weary, you know, in this, you know, in the plan or the direction or the implementation plan that you guys have put together. So how do you generate that buy-in from leadership, from teachers, within those professional development sessions?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's never an easy thing, no matter what the initiative is, right? I think the first thing, you know, we focus on is on leadership, and not every leadership is ready to buy in right now, and we have to allow them time to onboard, to see how it's evolving at other schools, which is what we're doing with Future Ready. It's 20 schools next year, it's 35, then it's 50, then it's, you know, so on and so forth. So those things take time to evolve. I think the second most difficult people to buy in are teachers. Especially with technology initiatives, most times, you know, they're device-centric. You know, we have no problem spending $1,200, $1,500 on a MacBook Pro, but as soon as the teacher asks for, you know, $150 for a sub to learn how to use it, we don't have any money left. So we really haven't been focused on the teacher in past, you know, technology deployments. So for us, because we are teachers, I woke up this morning, I taught 2 classes of 7th grade mathematics, and then I'm going to go out into the field, and all the things that I did in my classroom, I'm going to turn into a professional development module that I want to help you put into your classroom. So the PD model that we have has been built for teachers by teachers. We know what they want, we know what they need, we know what the challenges are, and we've made all the mistakes so that they don't have to. So I think that's really spoken to teacher buy-in, because we've gone into hostile environments where teachers are like, this is just another thing that I have to do. And I think we've turned it around by the end, because a lot of the stuff that we have is practical. It's practical applications because we use it ourselves. And then when we talk about parent buy-in, I think that's important. You know, we lead in the Leadership Institutes. We give almost a half a day to help schools plan and develop a community engagement model, right? Parent night, security issues, engaging with the police department, right? Making sure that, that a K-12 articulation from elementary to high school all has the same parent night content, that the rules are all the same, that they explain, really clearly to the teachers, to the parents, why we're doing this, what to expect. We want the community to be vested in this program, to let them know that, hey, listen, we know it's risky. We know it's risky to give technology to kids, to open up their world to the internet and all these things. We know it's risky, but isn't it riskier for us to not do this and to try and pretend that technology doesn't exist and not integrate it and not help them develop, the kids learn how to use it appropriately so that when they turn 18 and they go out into the wilderness, they aren't going to have the skills necessary to survive. So we try and make that case to the parents. And, of course, every parent wants their kid to be successful in life. Well, guess what? They're going to have to learn how to use technology. And it goes beyond that. And if you noticed in the gap assessment, we focus on engaging, third-party partnerships as well as nonprofits and companies. We need them to be vested in this as well, because our kids are going to become their employees, right? They're going to become their politicians. They're going to become their doctors and lawyers. And isn't it in their best interest to be involved in that developmental process?
And from a district perspective, Hawaii is a race to the top state, and I think our schools are pretty much tired of feeling like they have initiatives and reform efforts passed down to them from the state office on very fast timelines and all at the same time. And so what we focused on for technology integration was actually being reactive to things that schools were starting to take the lead on. So for example, we had a whole series of schools that were focusing on one-to-one deployments as of 5 years ago that built their own wireless networks piece by piece using Aruba routers. And before we had state office supporting them with our state network infrastructure. So we were actually behind the ball and being reactive to the needs of schools and professional development. I think one of our first one-to-one schools in the state, the one that built their own network, the principal, who's now at a different school, has said to me so many times, you know, I can only take this as far as I know how to take it, or as far as my staff know how to take it. And I can figure out how to buy computers. That's easy, relatively easy. What he needed help with was figuring out and expanding the possibilities of where it could go. So that's where this program really came from. And because we chose not to approach it as a top-down mandate, but more as an organic, grassroots, if you want to participate, we'll give you the supports that you may need. And if you don't want to participate, if you want to go on your own path, that's great too. We'll still be able to support your network infrastructure. But the idea is to create as many different options as possible for schools to be able to access supports to meet their needs relative to tech integration. We're not saying that we've identified a cookie-cutter way to develop a plan and implement that plan and it'll look the same across schools. What we're saying is here are some guiding principles that we know you have to think about to be successful, and we'll help you think those through in a way that meets your school needs.
Linda, if I could just jump in and say something too. I think it's kind of exciting right now because this year for teachers, they need to come up with a professional development plan. And for the first time that I can remember, we are totally free to pick whatever we want to pick to learn more about. And so that's super exciting. Our principal just put up a Padlet. She could have used a Google form, I know, but anyway, she used a Padlet, and she asked us to share what are we interested in learning in. So it becomes a group collaborative brainstorming session, and all the teachers are putting up their ideas, and we can see what each other is interested in. And, you know, I saw some things I hadn't even thought about, so it's really exciting. And then the other neat thing that is coming out of that, actually, I hope this is okay because my principal and I talked about this already, is that I found someone on Twitter. You know, she's been on before, Linda, Melanie Ching at YLI. And so she and I are really interested in, you know, design thinking and maker spaces. And so we kind of joked on Twitter, hey, this should be our professional development plan. Even though we're at different schools, it kind of seems like we have a like-minded interest, and wouldn't this be really cool to partner up? So I think that our principals have given us the go-ahead. I hope that might be okay. But I have a hard question for Stephanie and Brendan folks. I was talking with some people at a school today, and they are really struggling. They just don't have the devices they need. And I started thinking, too, that one thing that would be really good and ideal is if we could actually have, at some point in the future, a discussion about bring your own technology. I know that that's not on the DOE page right now, but my question to you folks is, are you folks also talking with and informing and helping the DOE IT network guys? Because my impression, and I'm totally an outsider just in the library, but I'm not sure that they always know how we're using technology to communicate, create, collaborate, you know, be global. And I just wondered who's informing them. So when do they have an opportunity to hear about Future Ready and to think, oh, maybe we should open our network? So,
Am I off the clock right now, or no? I actually have what I think will be surprising news for you. So the project team for our Access Learning Pilot Project and for Future Ready is actually a cross-office collaboration. So my office is involved to help incubate and be a neutral Switzerland-type office to facilitate collaboration between our curriculum office and our tech office. So our tech office is actually the office that found Janus Group, reached out to them, and set up Janus Group Professional Development in the one-to-one pilot project. So you would be surprised to hear that OITS brought you Access Learning Professional Development and brought you Janus Group. But separately around devices, we know that weighted student formula disproportionately impacts smaller schools. And there's oftentimes not enough consideration paid to the limits of weighted student formula and thinking through the implications of what it really takes to implement something statewide and centralization versus just throwing a few extra dollars in the school's weighted student formula funds. So we're doing a few things. First, we are deploying, we've done one procurement that's resulted in a bundle of preferred packages for devices and services at a reduced cost. So instead of WSCA, now schools that are in the Future Ready Fast Track or are already Future Ready certified will be able to access this list to purchase bundles of support and service and devices. What we're about to release next as part 2 of that is an RFP to generate a preferred vendor list that allows schools to lease the same types of packages. So for the first time, I think in department history, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, schools will actually be able to lease student devices. It's been a long time coming, and it's been a labor of love on our side. It's been something we've been working on for over a year now, and so we're excited to be able to actually deploy that lower cost option for schools. We are also working this past year. We submitted a biennium budget request to the legislature to get funds to essentially create a savings account that we could use to provide financial aid to schools to help offset the cost of devices. We're going in again this year for that same request. Last year the legislature declined to fund. But we are going in this year and saying again, you know, we think it's important to fund professional development, but we also want to keep in mind that, you know, some schools do need support around devices, and we can provide a per unit stipend to help offset those costs. In terms of bring your own device, there's a lot of network security impacts that we need to take into consideration, as well as some of the school level kid-to-kid equity impacts in terms of if I come to school and all I have is an iPhone 3, which I think I just got rid of mine. It's a little bit embarrassing. An iPhone 3, and the kid next to me, whose parents are a little bit better off than I am, has a MacBook Pro. What does that mean in peer-to-peer interactions? And so there's a lot of different facets to bring your own device. It's not just we've got to get access to every kid, and this could be the cheapest option. It spans beyond network security to bullying and lots of other components. So it's something that we are investigating. But in the meantime, until we get to that point, we're trying to open up lots of different pathways for schools to get device support.
Okay, thank you for that. That's exciting. Sorry, I thought of another question. Linda knows I always ask too many questions. I'm just wondering, you know, the professional development, I know Brendan folks are providing the pillars, and that's exciting. I know that HSTA has started their own also PD. But one other thing that my colleagues and I at Halikula have done, and I think it's what's kind of pushed us forward, is we took PD into our own hands. And actually Mike was a part of this too, you know, at ISTE, and then Linda, how we're doing Google Rocks, EdChat. And I'm just wondering, kind of like, is there any way or any potential way that participating in virtual learning and Coursera courses and EdChats, and I mean taking an active role and then showing how you're implementing it, would the department ever recognize that as means of, you know, the credit, raising the credits, or just to encourage teachers? Because I think there's this shift that needs to happen, and that's that teachers think PD has to come to them at their school during their, you know, Wednesday meetings. And I'm not trying to get in any trouble with union issues, but I just mean, I think that we're really closing the doors then, because there's so much amazing PD via Twitter or Google Hangouts. So, just wondering.
So I'm really happy you asked that question. The first thing is that we are changing the Pillars Institute a little bit for Future Ready Learning, and that's to incorporate components where Future Ready Pillars are actually providing professional development to their schools based on the school level gap assessments and on some new exciting HAPARA analytics that we'll have access to, that HAPARA has agreed to actually beta test in Hawaii. So at a relatively low cost to the state. So we're really excited about that. We have the world's most active Google Educator group. We really are trying to help support and moderate that group. I think Michael's doing the lion's share of that work to facilitate peer-to-peer sharing, because it can't all be from the department. And our ultimate goal, you know, Brendan mentioned that his goal is in 5 years to have worked himself out of a job in Hawaii as Janus Group. Our goal is that PIPE no longer, the office I'm in, it's a new acronym, that PIPE no longer has to facilitate this project, because it's become part of how schools are doing business, and they're relying on their pillars, and they have school level capacity, and there's peer-to-peer sharing happening across the state. So that's our goal, and I'm really glad that you asked that question, because I think it's a really important hallmark of the program.
So the pillars will be the pillars of the program.
Hopefully.
Cool.
And just to let you know that the extent of this program, by 2020, we hope to have more than 1,500 pillar teachers at schools across the Department of Education. So that's more than 10% of teachers will be pillar certified with the PD3 credits that go along with it.
And I forgot to mention one other thing. I knew I forgot something. We're actually talking right now at the whole project team, which HSTA is also a part of, about the extent to which we can actually build out a course pathway that ends up in some sort of licensure benefit. So for example, in Hawaii, we've got the teacher leader certification on your license or designation on your license. What if we built something now that was about future ready, or teacher leadership for technology integration? Something along those lines that allows you to have an extra credential that shows very formally on your license you are a leader in this area. So it's not just PD credits. Going beyond that to thinking about how we can be a little bit more systemic. And then we start to get into the really exciting, this is where I become a policy wonk, the really exciting impacts for teacher preparation and higher education and induction and mentoring, and what we can do to make changes in those areas now that we're putting a line in the sand very clearly and saying, you know, it's really exciting for us to have exceptional teachers that can do these things.
Neat. And I noticed that you have a website. Is it a good thing to tell people about it and they can look and get more information? Is it pretty, what you mentioned tonight, I noticed has is contained in that website. So we do have some show notes that are not quite ready, but I will put them in the event as soon as this show is over. It's part of the planning document right now, so we didn't want to add that on. But there will be a link to the Future Ready Hawaii website. You can actually Google it, Future Ready Hawaii website, and it will have lots of good information that will get people started on what it's all about.
And very shortly, we are going to start populating regular updates with teacher blogs, student blogs, admin blog posts from schools that are participating in the program, talking about what's going on day to day for them and some of their big takeaways. So that website, you may see an overhaul very shortly.
Nice. I wanted to point out, as a little tiny break here, Sharon McMichael, I think she's asleep now. She was in Austin, Texas, and I wanted to mention that she said, "That is one cute baby," and hi from Austin, Texas. That was like almost an hour ago, so she's probably asleep, but we agree. We like Mikey photobombing. Very cool. Okay. Lots to chew on. Talking about chewing on, lots to chew on. Anybody else? There's Mikey, the star of the show. I'm going to make him big. Hi, Mikey. He is adorable. Very cute. Hi, Mikey. Okay, anybody else want to add anything? JR, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on. I know it's, what time is it now? It is almost 11 o'clock your time. You are such a good friend. I really appreciate you coming on. And I hope you learned something, and I know we did from you. It's interesting how California is definitely different. Would you say you're just starting out in California, or have been? You're picking up on what you've already done, or how would you rate your progress toward Future Ready in your district?
At least in our district, I think we're just in the initial stages for it. Again, it's quite new, the initiative, where there has been a Future Ready Summit here, and then there will be one this actually this weekend. So I'm assuming that one will actually be done at the Department of Ed. So I'm expecting a lot of district leaders, school leaders will probably be at that event. I will not be in town, so I will not be able to attend for that, although I probably should. But again, it's sort of all in the initial stages. I think the last Future Ready Summit that happened just happened right after the end of the school year, and things are sort of getting tied together. Districts are kind of tying up loose ends before summer vacation started. So, but we're actually all looking. I'm looking forward to what the event will actually sort of produce and the kinds of conversations that could happen with that.
Neat. And I love how the Hawaii, I had no clue. Being a private school, I guess we're out of the loop. But I had no clue this was all going on and how it all works together. So I think after an hour I have a better understanding of how it works in Hawaii. And I'm excited for you. I think the Janus group seems to be doing a great job of not only setting it up, but also always addressing the why. So I think that's, it's going to be successful, I'm sure. Anybody else want to comment? We have about 3 minutes to the hour. We don't have to stop, but usually we do. If anyone wants to add anything, any comments or have any questions, maybe Holly and Jody have questions. Michelle.
I just want to say thank you. I was already in other tabs opening up all the resources people have mentioned. It's really exciting.
Great. That's all we need is to affect one person. That's really great. Anybody else? Okay, I guess if not, we'll say aloha for tonight. Next week, Shane Esselstein will be on talking about coding.org. He is the new regional director, I believe, for K through 5. And he's going to be telling us a little bit about that. And then the next week is scheduled something on Google Cardboard. So I know Jody's possibly working on her to be a presenter. So we'll have different perspectives on that. Yeah, so we are off on a new school year. Everybody is back in school. Are you back in school, or is your district back in school, JR? Not yet.
No, not yet.
Okay.
But I do have to start. We actually don't start until after Labor Day, so we have a really late start. But I do have to go back in and do a few professional development institutes and some meetings that we kind of need to attend to. So, because I have a different role.
Very good. Thanks again for coming on, and thanks to Brendan and Stephanie and Michael for doing a wonderful job and also Michelle. I didn't realize you were a pillar, Michelle. That is really cool. So yeah, we're gonna pick your brain, maybe all of you. Very much. Thanks very much for coming on, and we will see you next week. And if you want to stick around for a little debriefing, that's fine. Otherwise not. And we'll see you next week. And take care, everyone. Aloha.